Please be advised, in addition to the usual warnings of spoilers and slightly graphic imagery that comes with using footage from an R-rated production, I feel I must also warn that this film seems to have a bit of a fetish for strobe lighting, so this review might not be safe viewing for anyone suffering from photosensitive epilepsy. Hello my beautiful watchers. If you're wondering why I look like this, then there's an entire backstory episode you've clearly skipped. I recommend going back and watching it because I'm not explaining things again. Welcome back to Lost in Adaptation. This is the Total Recall reboot. As this film appears to be attempting to fill two pairs of shoes simultaneously, I guess what I'm going to need to do is provide a synopsis, then review it as a film, as an adaptation, and then as a remake, so strap in. The basic setup seems to be that towards the end of the 21st century, the Earth has gone downhill somewhat due to chemical warfare. The only two countries left habitable in the world are Great Britain, now called the Federation of Britain, and Australia, now called the Colony, which is almost entirely populated by Asians, and everyone in both countries talks with a pronounced American accent. I would love to see a prequel film explaining how this very specific setup came to be. The colony seems to be subservient to the Federation, having a local government but deferring to the British Council in all matters. The countries are connected by a futuristic elevator that's built right through the Earth, making travel between them possible in almost no time at all. Said elevator is named, somewhat dramatically, the Fall, a resistance group led by a man named Matthias, played by Bill Nighy, and his right-hand man Hauser are attempting to throw off Federation rule in the colony because they claim they're being exploited to the point of enslavement by them. The film starts with Quaid, now played by Colin Farrell, and an unknown woman attempting to escape a facility, resulting in his capture. Though apparently this is just a dream that Quaid was having. Waking up, he finds himself living a rather hard and depressing life as a production line worker in a robot factory, living in a small, dreary-looking apartment in the colony, the only perks of his existence being his beautiful, loving wife Laurie and his best friend Harry. Fun fact, Quaid's wife here is played by Kate Beckinsale, the wife of the director of this film, Len Wiseman.
Moderately uncomfortable, not beating her up because you don't actually beat each other up, but kissing her was a little bit dodgy.
Seeking to cheer himself up, Quaid visits Recall, a company that advertises the implantation of false memories into one's head as a cost-effective alternative to actually doing things. The salesman upsells him to a more exciting memory package than a simple vacation, being a double agent fighting for the British government and the Australian resistance. However, before they can start the process, their safety check flags up that his brain will not accept implantation because he really is a spy of similar description. Seconds later, a squad of soldiers burst into the room and kill everyone. They appear to be about to do the same to Quaid, but he suddenly gains the ability to gun through them all without really knowing what he's doing. Fleeing the reinforcements in an action chase scene, he returns home to tell his wife what happened. She responds by trying to kill him, telling him that she's not who he thinks she is. He manages to escape from her, eventually. Mr. Farrell, take it from someone who's become quite adept at surviving over the last few years. In order to escape into a crowd, all one has to do is stop running. Anyway, he gets a call for a phone that he didn't know was implanted in his hand from an old friend who cryptically tells him to go and find the key, and sends him the address of a safety deposit box. Knowing that he can be tracked through the phone, he cuts it out of his hand before going to retrieve the box. It contains a bunch of funky things, like a device for holographically hiding one's appearance, and a message from himself telling himself that he is not himself, and that someone changed his face and wiped his memory. A bit of a no-no when it comes to personal liberty, sure, but if someone was going to change my face, I certainly wouldn't mind looking like Colin Farrell. He tells himself that his best bet is to go to his old apartment and makes another annoyingly cryptic reference to the key. Quaid attempts to sneak back into Britain using his high-tech mask, but it malfunctions and he has to embark on another high-speed chase. He's picked up by Melina, the literal girl of his dreams, played by Jessica Bell, and together they escape. Barely. Finally getting to his apartment, he discovers that the key that everyone keeps going on about is a piano key, and he had apparently turned his instrument into a computer. An interactive holographic recording of himself reveals that he is none other than Hauser, a former government enforcer turned freedom fighter after a change of heart. He tells himself that his original mission was to infiltrate the resistance and bring it down from within, but fell in love with Melina and decided to join them instead, evidently before being captured, resculptured, and reprogrammed by his former masters. He explains that there's a computer file in his brain brain that contains a way to power down the Federation war robots they plan to use to invade and fully subjugate the colony, and he needs to get it to the Resistance leader before it's too late. As he and Melina try to leave the building, they find themselves surrounded by Federation forces. Harry turns up and tries to convince Quaid that none of this is real and he's just having an hallucination brought on by a bad reaction to the recall memory implant. He almost convinces him, but Quaid notices that Melina is crying, so decides it's all a ruse, shooting Harry in the head. There's another action chase sequence. It's not that they're bad, there's just an awful lot of them, resulting once again in them just getting away. They then go and meet the Resistance. Matthias is cautiously trusting of Quaid, but unfortunately it turns out the file in his head was actually a red herring, and the Federation had tracked them to Resistance headquarters, massacring everyone including their leader. The Chancellor of the Federation, played by Bryan Cranston, then reveals that Quaid is actually a bad guy after all, because back when he was Hauser, he voluntarily erased his own memories as part of a convoluted but apparently successful plan to get to the heart of the Resistance. He takes Melina and tells a bunch of his red shirt henchmen to re-upload the original bad guy Hauser memories into Quaid's head. Quaid is saved by his friend from the phone call earlier, who unfortunately dies in the rescue. The climax of the film is Quaid managing, against all the odds, to rescue his girlfriend and blow up the fall with the army of killer robots and the Chancellor on board right before they can invade the colony. His former pretend wife makes one last failed attempt on his life, for some reason waiting until he was awake to try and kill him. It seems to occur to Quaid that this might all be a dream brought about by recall, but doesn't voice his concern, and the colony lives happily ever after, free of British rule. But not free of judgment, I'm afraid. Here's my thoughts on it just as a film. Good on paper is probably the best way to describe this flick. It's got some great actors, amazing choreography, mostly impressive effects, and I personally quite like the action directing, even if the 10 million lens flares used throughout can fuck right off. Despite this potentially winning combination, it completely failed to make any sort of an impression with audiences and critics alike. It's almost instantly forgettable, and that's mostly because the plot is utter garbage. I'll get to this more in the reboot section. The casting in this film is a tad strange, to say the least. They've got Bryan Cranston, an American actor who is so typecast as a nice guy, an entire show was once made about the insanity that would be required to turn him bad, playing an evil British dictator, and Bill Nighy, a British actor primarily known for playing bad guys, or at least very creepy guys, in the role of an idealistic Australian freedom fighter. Honestly, compared to that switcheroo of roles, the Australian man who doesn't know that he's secretly a British man pretending to be an Australian man played by an Irish man makes perfect sense to me. I also feel like they kind of missed a trick with the casting of the two female leads. In the original, they were polar opposites in both looks and behaviour. In this film, while they're not twins as such, I did get them mixed up more than once, especially during the faster paced shots. Even ignoring for now the iffy story elements they took from the original movie, a lot of the plot of this new film just doesn't hold up. The ending in particular just doesn't make a lot of sense, assuming the whole movie is not just a recall invention. Everyone acts like killing the Chancellor and destroying the Fall fixes all the issues, but I'm pretty sure whoever takes over the Federation will be facing the same overpopulation issues, be able to build more robots, and will probably decide that a 12-hour plane ride is worth the effort. They also mention that the whole reason the Federation is invading the colony is because the one thing that they have that Britain doesn't is more space to move into. However, it sure as fuck doesn't look like it in any of the city shots of the place. If anything, it looks even more crowded than their British counterpart. In its favour, I will say I really enjoyed the cool little science fiction touches in this film, the glowing tattoos, the phones embedded in people's hands that can also project video chats onto glass, the creative way they showed how humanity had had to adapt to vastly reduced living space by introducing a more three-dimensional element to their architecture, like sky roads you can drive along the bottom of. I honestly think the makers of this film could have put together a neat little original science fiction movie if they got a good writer or chose a longer science fiction novel to adapt and stuck to the plot. Alas, its mixed results as a film must also be considered next to how well it did as an adaptation. Well, it's in name only, so yeah. Not great. Honestly, aside from the basic idea of a spy unknowingly wanting to be a spy, it's got nothing in common with the book. This film really played down the Mars element. It's mentioned maybe once in the entire film, then it's never brought up again. One of the things you'll notice about this new Total Recall is Earth looks awfully dark and grungy now. The book doesn't specify too much about life on future Earth, but the main issue there appears to be one of boredom, not poverty and survival. Recall is an escape from the humdrum, not hard life. What's very interesting about about this film is it seems to take a lot of influence from other adaptations of Philip K. Dick's books, like Minority Report and Blade Runner, sort of an amalgamation adaptation of adaptations. I believe that what this ultimately came down to is not so much a lack of loyalty, but a case of different loyalties. This film, like all second-generation films of its type, had a choice. Did it want to be another attempt at an adaptation, maybe a better, more accurate one? Or did it want to be a straight-up reboot of the first film? It could choose to be We Can Remember It For You wholesale, or it could choose to be Total Recall. It definitely chose to be a reboot. For every one thing that referenced the book, there were 50 things that referenced the Schwarzenegger picture. I can't say that I'm not disappointed, but I also can't say that I'm surprised in any way. I can just see the early production meetings now. Okay, let's show people how a real adaptation is done. Gonna make you proud of us, Philip. Oh cool, so we're gonna include the alien dormice from the end. So we're gonna need a woman with 3 breasts. Yeah, I think it's safe to say the original story is basically unadaptable, partly because it's so short, but also because the final plot twist was, while amusing, also fucking stupid. So I guess the next question is, seeing as it clearly chose the film over the book, does this reboot at least pay decent homage to that? Short answer, no. It's about as far away from the original as it can get while still containing all the major plot beats, i.e. a seemingly unimportant man dissatisfied with his current life, purchasing an adventure in the form of false memories of a past life as a secret agent, finding out he really was a secret agent with erased memories, fighting the men who came to eliminate him, finding out his wife was a deadly pretender, getting confusing messages, first from an old friend and then from himself pre-mind wipe, being rescued by his actual love interest, someone attempting to convince him it's all a psychotic episode, meeting up with a resistance movement, finding out he was unknowingly a triple agent, not a double agent, leading to the resistance being crushed, but still managing to single-handedly overthrow the evildoers, and ending on the suggestion that this might all have been the promised false memories after all. However, this new film replaces Mars with Australia of all things, a corporation that's become as strong as the government with the actual government, and added the elevator through the Earth element. They also worked in a not very subtle analogy for the American War of Independence, and most interestingly, they also combined Ironside's original character, the overzealous henchman who almost ruins everything by genuinely trying to kill Quaid, with Kate Beckinsale's fake wife character. The complete lack of Mars in the story is probably to blame for Earth's before-mentioned dystopian shift. The first film went out of its way to portray Quaid's life in the Earth suburb as idyllic but overly sterile to juxtapose the dirt and violence that was occurring outside of their little social bubble, and make his desire for a life of adventure at any cost more plausible. Unfortunately, there are quite a few things they kept from the original that just didn't gel well with the new story, either because of the more serious shift in tone or because of the new circumstances in which they occurred. For example, the scene where someone tries to convince Quaid that none of this is real and he's just having a mental breakdown. With proof that Quaid is an unstoppable killing machine and limited men on site to bring him down, it makes sense that in the original they would try to come up with a non-violent way to subdue him. In the reboot, this scene plays out while they're surrounded by an entire battalion of bulletproof robots, and they clearly established earlier in the film that the bad guys have the tech available to easily incapacitate someone non-fatally. It seems like an entirely pointless and unnecessary waste of time, resources, and opportunity when they could have just blasted both of them with the electric rope snares the second they stepped into the lobby of the building. The final tip-off for Quaid in this situation has also been changed just enough from the original that it makes no sense now. It stands to reason that when a guy who claims to not really be there and therefore be in no particular danger from Quaid's gun breaks into a flop sweat at the sight of it, he considers that a tad incriminating. But in this new version, Harry is trying to convince Quaid that Melina is a manifestation of his delusion. There's no reason why she wouldn't be able to shed a tear in that scenario. The reboot seems to be under the impression that any old bodily fluid will suffice as evidence of one's realness. I just don't buy Quaid wanting to go to recall in this version. There's no setup for it aside from him seeing a commercial for it. I mean, he's clearly not happy with his life, but they don't establish that he's the kind of idealistic, naive dreamer who would think that he could improve his life with an imaginary vacation like the original Quaid. Colin Farrell's Quaid just seems too down to earth. Get it? Because there's no Mars in this version? Oh, come on, that joke would have killed in the future. Speaking of Mars, the single reference to it that's made in this film raises some odd questions in this new context. I mean, is there a human colony there or isn't there? Space travel isn't really mentioned, and if living space really is the biggest issue, why isn't more effort being put into making that planet livable? An interesting reboot and adaptation change is Quaid actually does seem to have some good chemistry with his wife now, though admittedly that might just be because of the actors involved. I mean, how could you not have chemistry with this Irish rogue and, well, you know. Lastly, I must voice my complete and utter lack of surprise that the three-breasted hooker made it into the new film. So, why did this film just not work when the first did? Personally, I think the answer is bloody obvious. Like I said, this film chose to primarily not be an adaptation of the book, but a remake of an Arnie film. And you just can't make an Arnie film without Arnie. It doesn't matter when Schwarzenegger plays a two-dimensional character, or the dialogue is stupid and the plot is boring or riddled with plot holes and contradictions, because that's not what people want or expect from an Arnie film. They want to see him flex his big muscles, fire big guns, make cheesy one-liners and go bleh, bleh, bleh. Taking the same story and trying to recreate things with a more serious tone and genuinely good actors will not yield the same results. Suddenly, people start to notice the boring plot or the stupid dialogue and all those plot holes and contradictions. The magic is just gone. Am I saying that Arnie films are held to a lower standard of general filmmaking because they're fun? Not all of them, but basically yes. So, has it worked? Has your world been made better and yours been saved? No idea. Unfortunately, time travel was a one-way trip. I have to get back there the slow way. Same. Oh, so how did you guys travel back in time anyway? A wizard did it. Oh, fucking course. Terrence! What up, muggle? I feel like there's a story here. Yes, and apparently you play a starring role in it. Ah, my favourite kind then. Let's grab Reginald and talk about it over drinks. Reginald doesn't get to be on camera, you know this. Yes, well, you really should be nicer to him, you know. So, do we have to make space for 2 more roommates? We can wait for the future somewhere else if you like. No, it's fine. We change apartments every episode anyway. Yes, your beautiful watchers do catch on to that eventually, you know. Ah, whatever, it's just a gimmick. Hey, beautiful watchers, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that there's a variety of rewards you can earn by becoming a Patreon, including early access to all videos, getting to be a part of the survey about how many people saw the film and read the book, or playing Minecraft with me on my 24-hour server. Higher level contributors can also join the Dom Skype chat room, and best of all, choose future episodes of Lost in Adaptation. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness the Dom, I can't do that, all of my currency recently became self-aware and told me it loved me, I have not had the heart to spend any of it since then. Fear not, if you would instead be willing to like, share, subscribe, or a combination of all three, that goes a long way towards helping my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. Have a most pleasant day, and I will see you soon.